Happy Super Bowl Sunday to everyone. Good to have you here on this sort of unexpected show day. I'm joined by my very good friend and my colleague over at 76 Research, one Rob Hordon. Rob, good to see you as always.
Yep, great to see you today, Trish.
You know what? We were just talking about some of our tech issues that we thought we were having, and I'm wondering if they're more real than we thought, because I'm looking at what's going on in YouTube, and I'm looking to see the team over there, and it's not actually showing up. But you know what? I could be wrong, because now I see a few people over there. Well, you got me. Let's make sure. Guys, if you're in the chat on YouTube, can you just let us know that it's for real? I think it's up now. I think it's up. Woo, beauties of live TV, right? On a Sunday. I think we're good. I think everyone's here. Thank you for your patience. You know, Rob and I are kind of coming on unexpectedly today because so much has happened over the weekend vis-a-vis DOGE. You know, Letitia James is trying to do this victory lap, and we're like, no, honey, not so fast. So we wanted to get into a little bit of that. And I should point out, we are simulcasting right now on 76 Research as well as on the Trish Regan channel on YouTube. So that's kind of cool. But Rob, it was kind of an amazing Friday. One of the things that I didn't get a chance to get to, and why I wanted to come on with you, and it's such an important time and really kind of a revolutionary time, is because USAID, let's take a look at this, guys. USAID, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of that? Look at that video. Isn't that beautiful? The letters are coming right down at 1300 Pennsylvania Avenue, U.S. Agency for International Development. They are just doing away with this thing. They're doing away with this thing in like real time. And Rob, I mean, this was just incredible, right? Like Donald Trump's like, hey, it's over. And before they even had a chance to get their breath, it was happening.
Yeah, it's such a big story, and I think it's so revealing to everyone in the public, just the ways that this organization, this agency, was spending money in just the most obscure and sort of nonsensical, projects. It's really shedding light on how things work and have been working in government, and kind of the way money circulates.
The gross over spending, the insanity of it all, that they want to just keep going and going and going. Like it's unbelievable to me. It actually makes me really, really angry given what we have learned. And we can go through the list, but I'm sorry, however much for trans comics in Peru, and $2 million for trans surgeries in Guatemala, and the trans opera in Colombia. I'm like, what is going on with the trans stuff? Like, you guys have an agenda. I know you have a view on that. We'll get to it in a second. But first, let the viewers just partake in the insanity of it all. On Friday afternoon, Maxine Waters, this is not actually the USAID building. This is Department of Education, because it's another thing that Donald Trump wants to just do away with. Linda McMahon, she's being told, hey, Linda, you know what? If you're successful at your gig, you're going to just get rid of the Department of Education. We're going to send it back to the states, which is where it belongs. It didn't ever have a federal position until Jimmy Carter in the 1970s. So he wants to get rid of it. And Maxine Waters is like, no. So she marches down there with a few of her pals in tow. And this is what happened. Okay. And I just think, Rob, this security guard deserves like a gold medal, gold star, or, as somebody said, he's never going to have to buy a beer again, because I think that he earned his stripes, if you would. Take a peek. Okay, we're going to turn up the volume here, because this is unbelievable. I want you to fully appreciate it.
Tell us your name.
Here we go.
Look them in the eye. Come on, hold your face up. Look at him. Let him see you. This is him. Look at it. What's your name? Tell us your name. Give me that ID again.
Giving you the ID, I showed it to you.
So what?
I showed you the ID.
You do what?
I showed you the ID.
Could you let me see the ID again? Huh?
No.
No? Will someone else ask him for the ID? Will you ask him for it? He won't let me see it again. You didn't see it. You didn't see it. They didn't see it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I really think that Maxine should probably retire. sooner rather than later. I think that this was a good example of, sort of, and you see her pal there. I couldn't even tell who that was trying to come up alongside her, who can, sort of just hobbling along. It's like, all right, you know what? We need some fresh blood in there. They're out there spending our money. And then they're mad because they want an appointment, Rob, with Linda McMahon that they didn't have. Okay, so you can't just show up at a building and say, "Hey, I want to go see Linda." Like, that's not how it works. And so the security guard was told to lock the doors and protect everyone inside. They didn't have an appointment that was scheduled, and they weren't going to be let in. And they just went kind of bonkers on it. Again, it's exposing so much, right? Like, we're learning, wow, like our government was one big giant boondoggle, USAID, part of that. And I guess what's really terrifying, and we can separate Department of Education from USAID, what's really terrifying is that there's all this money, right? Hundreds of billions of dollars that was getting spent, 70 billion, I believe, for USAID just in 2023 alone. And it's effectively for liberal causes and just Democrat sort of, pet projects. And I think Americans are like, wow. So like, we'll see what happens with all of this. It's going to get fought out in the courts, but just learning, I think the sheer volume of your hard-earned taxpayer dollars going to a trans opera in Colombia or trans comic books in Peru, like that's kind of unsettling for people.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's real money. It's like $1 billion a week that USAID is funneling out, and I think these are clearly ideologically infused projects that. When people think about the U.S. helping starving people in the world or people in desperate need, okay, that kind of makes sense. We could spare some money to prevent people from dying in crises, but this is far from that kind of aid. This is to push ideological agendas in far-flung regions of the world, and meanwhile, where are the resources here at home for people who are victims of crises like in North Carolina or in California. So I think, yeah, to your point, it's just the revelation of exactly how this money's getting spent and the way it's kind of enriching people who are close to the decision makers. I mean, in some cases, even NGOs that are funded by Soros are, also recipients of this these USAID funds.
Here's a question. Like, what is the whole, okay, we have to have trans operas in Colombia and, there's going to be millions of dollars for DEI in Serbia. I'm like, DEI in Serbia? Like, I didn't realize there was, whatever. What is this about, really? Is this, we've got a complex in academia of all of these people were graduating. They have no jobs to go to. And so we're going to employ them in NGOs all over the world and kind of have the machine keep milking itself, all while hopefully, putting forward our viewpoint on things out there in front of the whole world. I mean, I'm just trying to understand it because I don't understand how the $2 million for trans surgeries in Guatemala advances U.S. interests. I just don't get it.
Yeah, no, we've had the military industrial complex, and now it's like the gender studies industrial complex, creating all these jobs out of thin air for people who, believe in these concepts and want to teach them to other people around the world. And the risk with it, or there's a lot of risk with it, but it's like we're really kind of pushing edgy, progressive, ideas in parts of the world that might be quite traditional and not necessarily receptive to it. So it really smacks of, kind of arrogance on our side that we're, promoting these cultural initiatives. When, what business do we have doing that in these countries?
And they're so upset, right, that we're going to expose this and that we are exposing this, and they're furious with Elon Musk. And they're using this idea that, oh my gosh, he's going to get at all your security. Watch out. Elon is onto you. He's going to get your social security number. He's going to track you, this, that, and the other. I mean, this is what we heard from none other than Letitia James, who I have very little use for. I mean, this woman is just rapidly political. I've shown the viewers the sound bites over and over again of her like, I'm going to get Trump. I'm going to get Trump. And, she went after him on some pretty crazy stuff. Interestingly, Roger Stone tweeted out something which Donald Trump then took and put out on Truth Social, and I guess on his Twitter account as well, suggesting that Letitia, it has been discovered, may be in a bit of a pickle because she may have inflated her own asset value on some of her properties in order to secure a lower mortgage rate. So we'll leave that alone. It's Roger Stone. I would take it with a grain of salt, although the president actually retweeted it. And I'd be curious to see what's there, because don't forget, the case that she has against the president, everyone, is that, okay, he overestimated the value on Mar-a-Lago, and therefore he got a better interest rate on loans with Deutsche Bank. And I, as AG of New York, I'm going to get in the middle of this, and I'm actually going to not only sue him, I'm going to hold him liable to the tune of nearly $500 million. It literally makes no sense whatsoever. It is all political gamemanship, but she is using this political power that she has yet again to go after Elon Musk, to go after the president, and she's saying it's all about these Social Security numbers that Elon's going to get. He would differ on that. He said, look, this is read only. We're not in there like checking people's Social Security numbers. We just want to know how much money you guys are spending on things. Here's Letitia.
In the past week, Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency have accessed the personal private information of tens of millions of Americans and sensitive data about public and private entities, Social Security numbers, addresses, tax returns, and more. This unelected group, led by the world's richest man, is not authorized to have this information, and they explicitly sought this unauthorized access to illegally block payments that millions of Americans rely on, payments for health care, child care, and other essential programs. Today, Democratic attorneys general are taking action to keep Americans' personal data secure, to keep sensitive information about Americans private, and to uphold our Constitution. We have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration for giving unauthorized individuals access to these immensely sensitive records in violation of the law. President Trump does not have the power to give our private information away to whomever he wants. And he does not have the power to cut federal spending that Congress approved, much less to do so by giving the richest man in the world the keys to all Americans' most sensitive information. As Democratic attorneys general, we are suing to stop this unprecedented and unauthorized attack and to protect your personal information. As I've said before.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Rob, here's the deal. Okay, like let me tell you, she's reading a teleprompter for the first time. Okay, that's what that, and she's going really slow, and she wants to make it really, really dramatic. And she's like, and I, Letitia James, I'm leading the charge with all the attorney generals around the country. We're going to fix this whole thing for you because he's getting everybody's nut. I'm like, listen. So there's been, by the way, she's like trying to do this victory lap right out on Twitter, and I was successful. She got like a 1 week stay, right? Like for 1 week, Elon is apparently not going to be able to access some of this stuff, which by the way is being debated, Rob, right? Like legally, because this is actually Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, who gave the keys effectively to Elon to say, hey, can you please monitor what's going on? Like think about it. If you have a business, right, and you bring in a consultant, let's say, you pay McKinsey $1 zillion to come in and take a look at your corporation, they're going to see where the money's going, and they're going to report back and say, here you go. And you, if you're smart as a corporation, are going to say, you know what, maybe I can save here, maybe I can save there. Is Scott Bessent and Donald Trump, are they just sort of saying, hey, Elon, come with your team because we trust you and these whippersnapper kids, right? Like 19 and 20, people don't like that they're so young. The team of engineers that Elon has, take a look at this and figure out where the problems are, like where the money's going, because we didn't know that before. We had no clue where our government was spending money. It was like, it sounds good, U.S. aid, but we didn't really know that your taxpayer dollars, my taxpayer dollars, were going to fund all kinds of crazy, I won't say the word, but you know where I'm going. I'll say crazy crap. like our like Caroline Levitt did. All this crap.
She makes it sound like Elon just kind of showed up in the middle of the night with his group and
Letitia does.
Started stealing social security numbers. But I mean, this whole narrative that it's an unelected takeover of government. I mean, Donald Trump was elected, and then he delegates authority to people like Scott Bessent or to special advisors like Elon Musk, and he tasks them to do certain work, and then they perform that work on behalf of the man who was elected to be president. So this idea that it's just some rich guy doing as he pleases is completely ridiculous. Obviously, the president himself is not going to be reviewing every spending item. Mm-hmm. And then it's sort of a fake issue, right? Like this idea that the DOGE team is stealing your social security number.
Oh, they're just trying to scare people.
They're trying to scare people, and it's an excuse to kind of get an injunction and delay. And I think we'll probably see a lot more of that as DOGE kind of does its work. You'll see all kinds of legal arguments and obstacles and administrative delays. I think that the test for like an injunction is like, okay, well, what if we have a little bit of a delay, will it really do any harm? So the judges are more inclined to grant the injunction while it gets sorted out. So we'll just expect more.
But the point is, like, it's getting exposed. It's getting exposed in real time. And someone said to me, well, Trish, the problem is New York Times isn't talking about it. I'm like, that's really because, the New York Times doesn't have to report on itself. The New York Times is getting money. I mean, New York Times got, what was it, $27 million from HHS? It got something like $50 million over the course of the last couple of years, $4 million in the month of August alone. You got Politico with, wow, I have this graphic. Like, I've been showing everybody this because this is amazing to me. Politico was really raking it in. In fact, if you go back to 2024, just last year, political year, of course, that was the biggie, Rob. Woohoo, look at this. Okay, so I'm just blown away. Like, in 2020, they started taking money, and interestingly enough, 2020 was the year that they came out with the spies, right? All those ex-spooks that said, oh, no, nothing to see here with Hunter Biden's laptop. And what do you know? It coincides with this big payment, the first big one, really, going to Politico. And then you look forward here and you see a giant uptick in 2024. You're like, wait a second, are they paying for like positive coverage? Is that why the New York Times and some of these other people, look at this. This is, I think you sent me this, Rob. This is Sam Lyman saying, when I worked in the Senate, we had Political Pro by default. So they were giving all these people in the government these subscriptions to Politico that nobody actually wanted, needed, or used, to the tune of $10,000 each, because, well, I guess it's hard to say. It's like, oh, well, they need a Political Pro subscription. They're in the government. And so they did this huge deal where they got all this money. Going back again to the numbers, it was like $8 million that they were getting in Politico from U.S. aid. Just 8.2 million, and it was all coming from these Politico Pro subscriptions. So sure, no, I guess the New York Times is not bothering to report on all this. The New York Times got 50 million. You get the Associated Press with close to 20 million. You get Reuters raking in 9 million from the Department of Defense for active social engineering, defense, and large-scale social deception. What the heck is that? Another 220 grand from the likes of the State Department. Rob, no, we're not going to see, I don't think, a lot of the mainstream media reporting on any of this, because the mainstream media is part of this, which is why I go back to subscribe to the channel, subscribe to 76 at 76 Research, subscribe to the Trish Regan Show, subscribe to our product, the 76 Report, code word dollar, by the way, so it won't be $10,000 a month. $10,000 a year. You're going to get much better information. It's going to be $1 a month for the first 2 months, $9.95 thereafter. But I'm just like, wow, like independent creators, like they're kind of the only ones you can trust right now, because there's so much graft and grossness that's embedded within the government that was effectively paying for positive stories. I mean, we thought NPR was bad.
NPR, BBC. I mean, it's USAID has really been used as a way to just flow money to media organizations. And, I think there really needs to be an investigation, like, start with Politico, track down, like, how many people were given these $10,000 a year subscriptions, and how many even registered and created a password for themselves. It's like, let's really figure out who made, now that we have the starting point, we have the information, $8 million, Let's see how the decisions were made. Follow it up the chain. Follow the money, and I think it'll be revealing, like what kind of deal was struck and with whom. It's.
I think it'll be really, and by the way, let me take it a step further. I want the money back. Okay, Axel Springer, you can swing it. $8.2 million for a bunch of subscriptions that weren't even used. Let's find out how many were actually used. For all the unused ones, I think we deserve the money back. I think you can go after Axel Springer. I think you can go after the individuals. Was anybody else getting a cut of this? I mean, there's a lot there, right? And that's why they're so freaked out. That's what people have to remember. That is why they are losing their minds. They cannot believe. Take a look. The letters on top of the building, they're coming down one by one, and people are losing their you-know-what. David Sachs, who, by the way, is our new crypto chief. Rob and I, by the way, we actually really do like crypto quite a bit. I'll get that out there. I mean, we kind of like Bitcoin. We kind of like Bitcoins or Tau. We've written a lot about that. Another reason to subscribe to the 76 report. We like gold as well. So, everybody gets like a little prickly, and I'm like, no, don't worry. Like, we really do like gold too. And I consider them two extraordinarily different investments. But USAID is going bye-bye. Everybody's flipping out. David Sachs had something to say to this. Tracy, welcome to the program. Thank you for your generosity. I'm going to get to your comment in just a second. Let's hear David Sachs, the crypto chief, talking about everybody freaking out about USAID.
Okay, so.
There we go.
Okay, so we knew the U.S. government runs a $2 trillion deficit every year. We're in debt almost $40 trillion. And we also knew that anytime anyone tries to cut anything in Washington, the whole city screams bloody murder. Okay, so the question is just why? Well, now we know. The money is all going to them. It's like round tripping to them. New York Times, getting paid. Politico, getting paid. Bill Kristol, perennial warmonger, getting paid. Ukraine, getting paid. Like 11 out of 12 publications, Ukraine, getting paid.
Incredible.
Viktor Orban, who's the prime minister of Hungary, was saying that he's very popular in Hungary. His political opposition, funded by USAID. In Poland, the left-wing political opposition funded by USAID, and on and on and on it goes.
BBC, you wonder why everyone in the UK
paid.
So, yeah.
Like
I couldn't believe the BBC's getting paid.
Every left-wing organization in the world seems to be getting paid by this slush fund at USAID, which disperses about $50 billion a year. That's $1 billion a week. That's actually a lot of money. And so it makes you wonder, the left in general tries to portray itself as a movement of the people, that it's grassroots. This is the exact opposite. This is AstroTurf. This is basically money coming from the top down out of Washington to fund all of these groups, maybe not even in the United States, like all over the world. So it makes you wonder, what is the real level of local support for these left-wing policies all over the world?
I mean, he did a really good job, I think, sort of surmising that. I didn't realize that Bill Kristol was getting money too. Oh my gosh. I mean, like everybody and their cousin, like in on this somehow, Rob. And it's really sick. And I got to say, like one of the things that really caught me off guard was just how much vitriol there was towards Donald Trump in this election cycle. And I think I've said to you, like, I almost like didn't understand, like what was wrong with all these journalists? Like what was happening? Why were they so, I've said, out over their skis in terms of their hate for him? And I mean, real hate, right? And like all kinds of comparisons to the worst villains in modern history who have slaughtered millions of people. And I'm like, okay, now like you're losing me because you guys are all just like, you're getting a little too crazy, right? Like the guy actually is sitting there talking about how we're getting ripped off by all these various countries because of trade deficits and stuff. And you go from that to, I'm sorry, but Hitler, like you've just lost me. Like you can't have a conversation about the economy. You can't have a conversation about taxes. You can't have a conversation about debt and deficits. And you just say he's the worst thing since, the worst, most heinous leader in modern history. Like, what is going on? And now, Rob, I know exactly what's going on. They were all freaking getting paid. So this was just one big capitalism boondoggle. Capitalism meets socialism. I don't know what you want to call it, but this is your money, my money. Every viewer out there, it was your money going to pay 8% of the BBC's budget. I mean, they were getting not budget, forgive me, their income, 8% of their income coming in the door was courtesy of U.S. aid and you and me. And there's something really perverse about that.
Yeah, it's sort of incomprehensible why we would be paying for the public broadcasting, operation of another country. It's just sort of inconceivable. But yeah, so this is definitely one. But you know what? Maybe U.S. aid is just like the starting point. DOGE is like just sort of it's like the tip of the iceberg. What more are they going to reveal once they start getting into these other departments and all of the payments that have been made and all the people who have benefited and the companies that have benefited, and how that kind of potentially plays into, the election coverage and the media. So, we've got a lot to learn.
I wonder, was CNN getting something? Was MSNBC getting something? I mean, is Whoopi and the other ladies over on The View, are they all getting something? Was Disney getting something? Did you know how aggressive ABC News's coverage against Donald Trump was? I'm just sort of really, I'm going to tell you, I'm disappointed. Like, as somebody who has worked most of her career in mainstream media, wishes she came over here sooner, but, didn't really understand what all this streaming thing was until really over the last year and a half when we started this channel. And, you have worked on Wall Street your whole career. By the way, Rob has run billions of dollars. I should just point that out. And we were so lucky to have him. He and I co-founded 76 Research together because I say, the markets are all messed up because the media is doing what the media does. And Rob is looking at it from an investor standpoint saying, but, yeah, you get the media, that's one thing, but you also had, certainly for the last, decade, this DEI creep coming into everything where, you could only invest in a company if it was this green or that diverse or whatever. And investors were losing their way. And so he and I, we've been friends for a long time, we just thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. And can't we have fully independent research that's non-biased, that's really just about making sure that you guys have the best tools at your fingertips, the best research at your fingertips, so that you know what companies to be investing in. And so that's why we created the model portfolios, and you can get all this information at 76 Research. I'm not doing a commercial here. I just sort of want to give the background to this because as a member of the media, look, I spent 20 years in mainstream media and I've worked for everyone. I've worked for CBS News. I've worked for NBC News. I've worked for ABC, or at least been on ABC a lot. They tried to hire me and I went to Bloomberg instead. So I've seen it all. I've been at Fox, and I know how the sausage is made, but I didn't know that. Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Reuters got paid. I didn't know that AP was getting paid by USAID. I did not know that Politico was getting paid by USAID. I was kind of suspecting something was up, but this is pretty gross for me to see, and it's disheartening. And I guess I come away with, the only people I trust are those in independent media because we're not on the take getting, this, that, and the other from Uncle Sam.
Yeah, it's crony capitalism, and I think it's not something that's necessarily been as pervasive as it is today. But you mentioned what is DEI? That's an attempt to kind of take over the private sector and put in all of these kind of ideological boundaries and guidelines. ESG is another version of it. It's this fusion of the government and government controlled entities and NGOs with the private sector. So, what we're seeing, or what we really lived through over the last 5-10 years, has been this kind of fusion between government and then, of course, the censorship and the pressure that was applied to the tech platforms that Zuckerberg, talked about on Joe Rogan. So, that's just what's all coming to light now, is this really unhealthy, partnership that's merged between the federal government, really the bureaucracy, and
the
media and the private sector and the investment world.
Mm-hmm.
That's what needs to be unwound. And
so this is what he's doing. Okay. And Donald Trump has big plans because he really wants to unwind all of this, including maybe with a sovereign wealth fund. We'll get to that in a second. But, as he does this, right, as he tries to unwind it all, he's being met with this resistance. Letitia James, very proud, to lead the resistance, whatever. I actually think that she's going to be in a whole lot of trouble when push comes to shove, and she's flirting with the law in ways that she shouldn't. But before we talk about that, I just want to show you Andy Kim from your former, well, I should say your home state of New Jersey, your former state of New Jersey. He is the new senator who took over for the other sort of corrupt guy, Menendez. Here's Senator Kim, and he's just saying, hey, if we have to, we will shut down this is, by the way, a Democrat saying we'll shut down the government over Elon Musk and DOGE. And I'm like, oh, buddy, bring it on. Where'd he go? Let me see. Here he is.
My next question, because your colleague Jeff Merkley basically said he's prepared to try to shut down the government over some of these sledgehammer actions that he's seeing by Elon Musk. Are you prepared to shut down the government, to join Democratic colleagues who want to stand in the way of keeping the government open?
Well, you have to look at what the Trump administration is doing right now. They are simply trying to, they are simply trying to dismantle the government. So yes, look, if we have to take steps to be able to hold them accountable, use the leverage that we have to force it, I cannot support efforts that will continue this lawlessness that we're seeing when it comes to this administration's actions. And for us to be able to support government funding in that way, only for them to turn it around to dismantle the government, that is not something that should be allowed.
So just to be clear, Senator, you are open to voting yes to shut down the government, to make this point.
This is on them. This is about whether or not they can get the votes. They are the majority, and if they cannot govern, then you know, that's for the American people to see. But I worked in government. I worked through multiple government shutdowns. I would be the last person to want to get to that stage. But we are at a point where we are basically on the cusp of a constitutional crisis, seeing this administration taking steps that are so clearly illegal. And until we see a change in that behavior, we should not allow and condone that, nor should we assist in that.
Senator.
All right. I don't know what keeps happening to your shot. Forgive me. I got to fix it because it keeps, there we go. But this guy, my gosh, Andy Kim, come on. I mean, you're going to shut down the government now? I think actually that Elon is going to say, whoa, like nobody wants the government open right now. Nobody wants all this money being spent. It's like they're going to cut off their nose to spite their face. I mean, that's all you got? Fine.
Yeah. And it was just a few months ago that they were saying, you know, the idea of not, you know, of having a government shutdown would have just been so apocalyptic and unthinkable. But now that it suits, you know, they don't like what the president's doing, you know, they're happy to shut it down. Or it kind of also reminds me of Maxine Waters, you know, so critical of the insurrection and J6 and all of that, but she's happy to be so abusive towards the security guard and, you know, who's just doing his job at the Department of Education.
Yeah.
A little bit of hypocrisy. Yeah.
Just a little. Andy Kim. Okay. But I would just say, like, not only is there the hypocrisy, but I think in some ways, like, it's sort of funny because Elon's trying to shut down the government. And now they're threatening, if you keep this up, we're going to shut down the government. It's like, really?
Well, and yeah, there's a kind of a delicious irony in that. But, you know, I mean, he's trying to really streamline the government, right? And I think that's the point of DOGE, and that's the necessity, right? We have these massive deficits. It's really kind of core to the whole inflation problem that we've lived through. So we need to reduce our spending. And by the way, you know, there are a lot of opportunities. What's coming to light is there are really a lot of opportunities to reduce our spending. You know, our problems are self-inflicted. We spend too much. And, you know, this just the first step is to just get the, you know, have the read-only access and just tell the public how is that money getting spent and like why and on what. And it's a great starting point to,
sure,
you know,
to unraveling all of it. And then maybe like refocusing. So one of the things that Donald Trump's talking about is a sovereign wealth fund. This is a really, it's something that's tried all over the world and has resulted in money back effectively to people that live in some of these, you know, communities. Like Dubai comes to mind. You think about the Norwegians and their sovereign wealth fund. And Donald Trump's is like, you know, again, business guy, like, wait a second. Like the U.S. is doing this, that, and the other all over the world. Like, why aren't we making money off of it? Here he is.
This is an executive order. This charges your Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, and your Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, to begin a process that will hopefully result in the creation of an American sovereign wealth fund.
It's a very exciting event. We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, which we've never had. We have a lot of things that create wealth, and you're seeing that over the last 2 weeks. I think we've created more wealth. Other people have created de-wealth, the people, my predecessors. We're creating a lot of wealth. Scott, maybe you'd like to say something about it, and I'd ask also Howard to say something about it.
Yes, sir. This is very exciting. We're going to stand this thing up within the next 12 months. We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people. We're going to put the assets to work, and I think it's going to be very exciting. We're going to study best practices that's done around the world. It'll be a combination of liquid assets, assets that we have in this country as we work to bring them out for the American people.
The extraordinary size and scale of the U.S. government and the business it does with companies should create value for American citizens. If we are going to buy 2 billion COVID vaccines, maybe we should have some warrants and some equity in these companies and have that grow for the help of the American people. So I bring all these things together, I think Scott and I will create an amazing sovereign wealth fund for you, sir.
So other countries have sovereign wealth funds, and they're much smaller countries, and they're not the United States. We have tremendous potential in this country, tremendous. You're seeing that, what's happened just in a short period of time. And as an example, TikTok, we're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it, otherwise we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund, whatever we make, or if we do a partnership with very wealthy people, a lot of options, but we could put that as an example in the fund, and we have a lot of other things that we could put in the fund. And I think in a short period of time, we'd have one of the biggest funds. And some of them are pretty large, I must tell you. Some of like the Saudi Arabia fund is on the large side, but eventually we'll catch it. But we're going to create a lot of wealth for the fund, and I think it's about time that this country had a sovereign wealth fund. And these two gentlemen and some others are going to work with them very closely, and they'll be heading it up, and they're going to do a great job. Two highly respected people that have done unbelievably well in the world, in the real world. So that's a big deal, huh?
Yes, sir. I think it's going to create value and be of great strategic importance.
Wow. I mean, it's pretty incredible because, again, I think this goes back to, Rob, the fact that you get somebody with a business sensibility there who's not just a politician, who's not just, trying to give out US aid money, but is really trying to think about how do we as a nation grow what we have? Like, how can we benefit more? I mean, it's like, he's out there saying, wait a second, if Ukraine doesn't pay us back for all the money we lent them, I want their rare mineral rights. And then we're going to take those rare mineral rights and we're going to put, the mining companies in there, and we're going to get the minerals, and then we're going to sell them, and hey, the money's going to go back to the sovereign wealth fund. So he's just thinking about this in all new ways. And of course, Scott Bessent, being the asset manager who's coming into this, also is thinking about that. Howard, that's his background as well. So I think everybody's like, wait a second, like, why are we just having money like sit around idly? Why don't we put this to work? Now, the flip side of it is, okay, that's fine if you get smart people like Scott and Howard in there, but gosh darn it, what if Maxine Waters was suddenly running your sovereign wealth fund, right? Maybe this will pressure American voters to make sure they get really smart people that are there, because you don't want the Kamala Harrises of the world, or not to pick on Maxine, but the Joe Bidens of the world. Like, you do not, or Nancy Pelosi, you don't want them running your sovereign wealth fund. And you want to make sure that, I even think about the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, she wasn't up to this. Like, there's no way she couldn't have done this. You need real people with real backgrounds in this. Otherwise, it could be kind of a dangerous spot where you're giving sort of almost more power, more financial power to America. So this is like a double-edged sword, if you would. I mean, he's thinking about the right stuff. We just have to hope that, the Democrats don't get in there.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's always, your antenna should always go up when you see this kind of connection between like the private sector and government and, government getting involved in like capital allocation decisions.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like look around the world, there are some enormous sovereign wealth funds. You mentioned Norges Bank. I think it owns like something like 1% of the S&P 500, all of that oil money that the Norwegians have accumulated and invested over the decades. In Singapore, Saudi Arabia. So there are really huge, deep pools of capital around the world that countries, have invested in their, in their sovereign wealth funds, and it can actually help achieve certain strategic ends for the country as well. And I think that's what Scott Bessent was making some allusion to. So it was interesting in his confirmation hearing. He did talk about like liberating the balance sheet of the United States government and. So taking all of these assets that are sort of like, we own so much land, we have all of these energy resources that are kind of not really being put to work for the benefit of the American people. And the idea of, you kind of put it into a vehicle that's professionally managed and I guess somewhat independent and properly managed and strategically, guided by the best investment minds in the country. There is a lot of potential there and it could really help the U.S., start achieving a lot of its industrial goals.
Is that one way to solve this massive problem with all of our debt, I wonder? Again, I have a lot of faith in Scott, and you and I know people who have worked with him and think extremely highly of him. And he's got the intelligence and the sophistication to be able to run something like this. I mean, Howard, of course, as well, but Janet Yellen could not have done the job. Like, let's just be honest. And I think a lot of the folks, and unfortunately on the other side really don't have the financial sophistication. I'd say even on the conservative side too. I mean, this president, Donald Trump, is just a whole new ballgame, like nothing we've ever seen before in the conservative or Democrat party. And he's approaching this like a CEO, like a chief executive. And he's looking at the balance sheet saying, what the heck? You got all this debt and you're not doing anything with your assets, and let's shore this thing up. And for goodness sakes, can we stop spending money on stupid stuff? Like, this is refreshing, I think, for the American people. But, once this thing launches, you really better hope that it's private enough that you have people who are smart and able to function more outside of government to run it.
Yeah, like, you hope as they design it, and he said he'd look at best practices, it's not going to become some kind of USAID piggy bank for whichever politicians are in power. So that's the risk. But, if done intelligently and, really in a way that's professionally managed, we've got to do something, right? And Trump's, we know how much debt we have. So Bessent's got the problem of trying to, keep interest rates low, keep long-term interest rates low and manage the debt, work on reducing the deficit in order to keep interest rates low and to keep the private sector buying our bonds, but also, think creatively on the asset side of the ledger and what are some ways to create value, for the United States as if it were a business.
As if it were
kind
a
of
business.
connected.
What?
Yeah, kind of connected like to the strategic Bitcoin reserve or the digital asset stockpile, which is actually, I believe actually a potentially a separate initiative, but there is the potential within the sovereign wealth fund to invest in Bitcoin or invest in digital assets, for the long-term benefit of the people.
Speaking of digital assets, it's something that you and I follow pretty carefully, and it relates to AI, of course. There was a lot of news recently about this Chinese company, DeepSeek. And DeepSeek was like, we can do, for a fraction of the cost, for, what would it cost you tens of billions of dollars, we can do it with $6 million. And everybody kind of freaked out. And you had the market selling off pretty significantly, NVIDIA selling off really significantly. I mean, these guys were using NVIDIA chips for whatever that's worth, right? So they're still using our products. And we know the Chinese are very good at copying things. One of the things that struck me on that whole story was that, as a journalist, I'm looking at it, and I think you pointed out to me that the story originally aired like early December. in Bloomberg. It was kind of a puff piece on this company, DeepSeek, out of China. And then it was in Wired, and again, like another puff piece. But those are two, I used to work at Bloomberg, and I know that Bloomberg really likes to make nice with China. And likely that was sort of what you call a planted story from a PR person that gave them sort of the spin. You see the same story in Wired, and then all of a sudden, like over the weekend, 2 days after Larry Ellison and Donald Trump announced their initiative, and they're going to put all this money into AI, boom, presto, that story goes everywhere over the weekend. Sunday night, people are flipping out. You see the Asian market selling off. Sure enough, U.S. market selling off, NASDAQ selling off. Everybody's rattled. And yet, it really wasn't what you think. You've written a lot on this. We've talked a lot about this. It's, again, if you go to 76research.com, I encourage you to get our 76 report. Tell me what you really think is going on with DeepSeek.
Yeah, no, it's sort of the context is interesting because, as you pointed out, it was this information about the technical paper came out in December, but talking about the $6 million that DeepSeek claimed to have spent on building its AI model, which is like way below what all of the U.S. counterparts spent. But it wasn't until like January, the weekend of like January 26th, 2 weekends ago, that somehow all this information got put in front of investors and led to this panic. Monday morning, Nvidia's trading way down, and about a couple dozen stocks that are very, very tightly tied to the idea of an AI related capital spend really just got destroyed in the market. What happened was, I think investors, the market this was all kind of new information for the world, and they were processing it. It was sort of shoot first and, figure it out later. And now here we are kind of 2 weeks later. There's been a bit of an analysis and kind of digestion process of, okay, what does DeepSeek really mean for AI and technology and markets? And I think we've seen a pretty substantial recovery in a lot of those names, not all of them. They're not quite, they were really kind of peaking, like, because it was like coming right off of that Stargate announcement by Trump. So Nvidia had reached its all-time high.
It's like people were kind of looking for a reason to sell, I think. There was a little bit of that going on, and then all of a sudden this thing materializes.
And they really sold it, though. I mean,
the Chinese really sold it.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I think the Chinese, like, this was a PR op. Like, look, when everybody's saying the exact same thing, you have to, like, my antenna goes up, because they're all like on the U.S. can't do it, the U.S. can't do it, and they want to make Donald Trump look bad and Larry Ellison look bad, and it was just sort of perfect timing for them. All of a sudden, this thing reaches a crescendo 48 hours after they announce what they're doing here in the U.S. I think that was actually kind of deliberate. One of the things I think is true is, like, the Chinese are good at copycatting. Like, they can, they'll copy, they'll lean over and look at your homework, but are they really going to innovate? Are they going to innovate and take this thing beyond? Are their machines going to be better? I mean, it is kind of, it's important that we focus on it, because it's kind of a race. Some people are so worried about this, and they think it's going to be incredibly damaging to society. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Like, I actually do worry about AI and, everybody being replaced one day. At some point they'll just say, well, what would Trish have said, or what would Rob have said? And then they can create little, videos of us without even needing us, right? I mean, we're all at risk for that. But simultaneously, Rob, I worry about what happens if China gets there first. And I want to play a soundbite. The Planeteer Chief Technology Officer talked about exactly that this is kind of like an arms race, if you would, for AI.
I think one of the obvious lessons of DeepSeek R1 is something that we've been saying for the last 2 years, which is that the models are commoditizing. Yes, they're getting better across both closed and open, but they're also getting more similar, and the price of inference is dropping like a rock. But I think the real lesson, the more profound one, is that we are at war with China. We are in an AI arms race. And I got into a disagreement with Sam Altman about this at the Senate AI Summit over a year ago, where I was arguing that we are in an AI arms race, and there's an opposing view that we can all get along and we can cooperate on these things. And I'm sure the other side feels quite different, realizing that their IP has been stolen in this process here. But this war started long ago. It was an economic war with the ascension of China to the World Trade Organization, the greatest IP theft in history, the greatest wealth transfer in history. It is an opium war. The number one cause of deaths of 18 to 45-year-olds in this country is fentanyl. that is coming from China. It is a diplomatic war. The Belt and Road Initiative is basically indentured servitude for other countries to the CCP here. And the unprecedented phase zero gray zone operations of the CCP, how many times are we going to believe that anchors are dragged across the sea that cut undersea cables here? But I think one of the things, China knows they're at war. The question is, we kind of equivocate on it as a peace-loving nation. But one of the things I want to make sure we all do realize is that the engineering in R1 is exquisite. The optimizations that they've done are really impressive. And I don't think you can get away with the facile explanation that the Chinese just copy and we're the only innovators. We have to wake up with the respect for our adversary and realize that we are competing. But they absolutely did steal a lot of that through distillation of the models, and perhaps they stole even more. And then you can look at the GPU sales growth in Singapore. It's a tiny island nation. I'm pretty sure there's some sanction invasion going on there. And we have to realize that the AI race is winner take all, and it's going to be a whole of nation effort that extends well beyond the DOD in order for us as a nation to win. And that M-Day was yesterday. The time to mobilize has come.
So that was a pretty strong statement. Like it almost, you can make the comparison to, there was an arms race in World War II, right? And one of us was going to get the nuclear bomb, and that was going to dictate the rest of the future. And thank goodness the U.S. won that. But it caused a lot of destruction, obviously, along the way. And, there are a lot of people that would say AI risks the same kind of thing. But you also just don't want it in the hands of countries that, well, how do I say this nicely, are not exactly our friends. And I think that, he's articulating, Rob, what the risk really is.
Yeah. And I appreciate his point that, you don't want to be complacent about what China's capable of. I think the point he was making was that, it may not have been such a wild efficiency breakthrough that everyone was panicking about, that you wouldn't need to buy GPUs anymore, but they did figure out how to do more with less. But at the same time, he's noting that they did engage in what they call distillation, which was basically going into the Chat GPT model and asking it a million questions and learning from it. So they kind of took a shortcut and cheated, if you will. But no, absolutely. It's a global competition with China in this most crucial area of technology. And that's actually what gives me some comfort that we are going to continue to have very robust spending on AI, on data centers. And I think that's part of what we've seen over the past 2 weeks is this comfort level that the market now has that, this is not stopping. I took down some notes because we've had an earnings wave over the past couple of weeks, and some of the big Mag 7 tech platform stocks, they've given their capital spending forecasts for the year. Google, Alphabet spending $75 billion, Meta at 65, and these are up. They're like lifting these numbers. Meta 65 billion, Microsoft 80 billion, Amazon 105 billion. So those four companies, $325 billion. Stargate has a $500 billion budget. I think we're, yes, the Chinese may have figured out a way to be more efficient with the technology, but that's not stopping this, full throttle approach between government and the private sector in terms of really developing our AI footprint and investing in those resources.
Yeah, and we saw, while NVIDIA isn't back to the levels it was right as Stargate was announced, it has certainly recovered a lot. I should point out that NVIDIA is actually not in any of our model portfolios. And the only reason for that is we just figure, you can get that in the S&P 500 and you probably should be invested in the S&P 500 and you have that exposure. But we have other picks, especially within the resilience portfolio. I'd encourage you guys to go look at that, the resilience portfolio, which is about growth. And the idea is to be able to play off of AI and the growth within the sector, but have the optionality companies that aren't, say, the most obvious ones like an NVIDIA. So there's still a lot of growth there to come. And I'm not changing my view that I'm just blown away by all the technological changes that have just happened, like since I started doing this show, right? Like in the last year and a half. I mean, the fact that I can do this and I don't have to pay thousands of dollars for a live truck and I can sit here and talk to you all live and, see, some of our regulars like Mike Costa, who's actually one of the team members members there, Trish, Regan, and a few other regulars I'm seeing here tonight, plus a lot of new names, a lot of new faces. And I think that's because, one, we're simulcasting on @76 Research, and two, we're on at a different time. I'm not usually on Sundays. It's usually in the afternoons, Monday through Friday, always live. So if you guys are just watching for the first time, please make sure that you subscribe. It's really important that you do that to the channel. I mean, go check out, of course, 76 Research as well, but do me the favor of subscribing to this channel because there's a lot more to come. And I'm just excited for all the developments and all the changes. I'm amazed every single day. In the meantime, we have a Super Bowl going on tonight, and I just want to play this little soundbite. Travis Kelce was asked a couple days ago, so what do you think? You know, the president's going to be there. He's making history, by the way. First president to ever attend, sitting president to attend a Super Bowl. So big deal. And I think his money is on this team with this guy. Let's listen to Travis Kelce.
That's awesome. It's a great honor. I think, no matter who the president is, I know I'm excited because it's the biggest game of my life, and having the president there, it's the best country in the world, so it'd be pretty cool.
It was hard to hear it. I get it, but it was taken on somebody's cell phone. But he basically said, this is a great honor. It's a great honor to have the president there, no matter who the president is. It's like, good answer, Travis. We'll forget Taylor for all the things that she's said over the years. And of course, Donald Trump actually sending some very well wishes to the Mahomes family. Patrick Mahomes, Brittany, who has been very much a MAGA supporter and gotten a lot of negative attention for that over the course of the last couple of years. He sent some very nice wishes to them. They have a new baby, and I have a feeling he's kind of rooting for the Chiefs only because he had to rescind the Eagles' offer. The Philadelphia Eagles, they lost their opportunity to go to the White House when Donald Trump was last in office because they refused to stand for the national anthem. I'm thinking the national anthem is going to be a big deal tonight. But anyway, it's Super Bowl Sunday, something kind of iconic, very Americana about that. And Donald Trump making the point that he wants to be there. And that's great to see. Like, it's really, I'm sort of surprised. I'm sort of surprised that we didn't see another president previously attend. But, Biden wasn't going anywhere for anything. I don't even know as he did the interview.
Well, I have to think as a New Yorker, Trump can't be rooting for the Eagles. But, yeah, I think you're right. He likes KC.
Yeah, he likes Travis Kelce, and he likes Patrick Mahomes because of his wife. His wonderful wife. Listen, I'll let everybody get over to the football stuff. Thank you for being here live. Please remember to subscribe, share, make a comment. Let us know. Who are you rooting for? Eagles or Chiefs? I got to tell you, in our household, my husband's a Buffalo Bills fan. Grew up in Buffalo, and this is a hard game for him tonight. So for all those Buffalo fans, I know how you feel. There were lots of things being thrown at the TV over the course of the last couple of weeks. The kids are like, really? It's that important? Yeah, it's that important. For Buffalo fans, indeed. Anyway, Rob, always a pleasure. Good to have you here today and tonight, and thank you for joining me. And everybody, make sure to sign up for 76 Research, 76research.com. Use code word $. I'll be back live with you here on Monday. As always, go sign up for the 76 channel if you haven't, @76 Research. See you Monday. Enjoy the game.